So what are you
Hi,
thinking, Jake?
Keegan.
Class-wise. Hey, Jake, how are you?
Um, I'm good, buddy. I missed you.
Missed you, man.
I think, you know, I think I'm gonna have to go with a monk.
A monk. That's interesting. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've played a monk
I've
before.
never played a monk before, so I figured I'd play a monk.
Okay, what are you thinking for your race? What do you want to play as?
I don't care.
Oh, you don't
Uh,
care? Okay. That
uh,
seems like a problem.
it,
I
it,
want you to
it
care.
does. What is it? I'm thinking. Okay, let me give you the lowdown. I'm thinking pirate.
Pirate.
Yeah. So probably a human.
A human pirate monk. When you think of pirate monk, you mean like a pirate who beats
It's
people up.
Yes, it's definitely
Drunken master.
way of the drunken master subclass, obviously.
That's fun. I like that.
It's like I'm envisioning like a Jack Sparrow situation where I'm feigning incompetence, but clearly I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, you kind of stumble towards somebody and whatever,
And then
but then
just
you hit him
beat
with
the
this like
shit out of
and you
them.
fucking, yeah. I like that's cool. Do you have a
Yeah.
name for this guy? Drunken master pirate monk.
Let's go with uh he's gotta have a cool nickname. I'm trying to think of the nickname first, so that way I can build his name around it. So
Salty
on this
Richard, but my friends call me Salty Dick.
yeah, on the sea, he is called Salty Dick. So his name is Richard Moore.
Richard Moore. Salty Dick. I like it. And that's all you got to do, folks. That's all it takes. How long was that? We are 2 minutes
That was
and
2
five
minutes,
seconds in, and we have a
and
D&D
we
character.
that was 2 minutes and 5 seconds in, and we jerked each other off at the beginning.
Whoa! You're not supposed to tell him, man. That's before we hit record.
uh, that was just
Think
a
I
little,
got.
a little nod to the last episode, if anyone was worried.
Think I got some good ones this week. I have some interesting questions that I would really like to hear your thoughts about. Because I
Okay.
think both of these questions we're going to have different opinions on as a DM.
Oh, okay. I mean, just get right into it.
It turned into like a Watto. Oh, okay.
I'm gonna sell you these pies.
And your Jedi mind tricks don't work on me. Alright, what was I doing? Where am I? Who are you? This comes from the ink in my soup on Reddit. The ink in my soup asks, should I tell my players the DC of a check before they roll it? I was just curious on how people felt about this. Currently I do not, but I'm wondering if it should be something I start doing. Thanks.
Okay. I fucking love this question because I
This is a
do
classic.
both. I do both frequently. And
I
if I'm
also
like-
do both.
If I'm like, okay, yeah, you know, it seems like you could jump across this gap. Give me an athletics check, and then they just do it and say it. I'm just like, as a DM, my gauge is, do I like this number?
Yes. You said the quiet part out loud. Yeah. It's yeah, especially for like not super important checks. Like I'm looking for like a pretty above average roll. You know, I'm looking for a 10 plus and I'm like, yeah, you know, you do it. And you know, and then like if they do happen to roll really poorly, I'll be like, all right, well now we got to come up with like something that happens, a little you know,
Yeah.
roadblock that they encounter. But yeah, I'm looking for like just a decent number. And then I would
You know,
say where I
if they-
do
if they just shouted out like a number before they rolled before I even got a chance to think about it, if it sucks, the amount of how bad that shit is going to go down is going to be fully well reliant on how funny the next thing I come up with is.
True. Yeah, if it's funny to like make something fail horribly, like it's gonna happen if you roll
Yeah.
like that. Also, like just etiquette wise, don't do that. I hate when I'm like when somebody's like, I jump across the cavern, I roll a 14, and it's like, what if it was
It's like,
really
I
easy?
didn't
Like,
tell you what to roll.
yeah, like what if I wanted you to roll something different, or what if it was really easy and maybe you roll badly, and now you've introduced a failure where you fall down a ravine when I wasn't even going to make you roll for it. You know,
I've done that so many times.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, okay, I gotta play a little devil's advocate here because I am the player. It is. I feel like it could also, in some scenarios, be a nod to from player to DM being like, "Hey, you could do something really funny here."
True. I'll say when I do tell my players the DC, it's because it's something particularly difficult, and I want them to know what they're getting into. So if they say, I'm going to jump across this ravine, and this is a much larger ravine, right? And I'm like, you could do that. It's going to be a DC 18, athletics check or whatever. Then they know, oh shit, like maybe, because, maybe in their head, they didn't imagine the ravine the same way I'm imagining it, right? So you want to get everybody on the same page. So that's when I like to tell them. It's like when it's something particularly hard, I want to make sure they know.
Yes. I definitely like the big ones are like if they're going up against a dragon, right? I'm like, okay, it's going to use its breath weapon on you. It kind of feels as a player, like I've noticed that if they roll like pretty well, but you don't say the check before, and let's say they roll like they're fighting the dragon, they roll like a 17 or something, and then they're like, oh yeah, I totally dodged that, and then you're like, oh, it was an 18, and then like afterwards they're like, oh, that fucking sucks,
Yeah,
like, that's totally.
It doesn't feel great.
Yeah, I feel like if they're going to be exceptionally high, then absolutely, then you have to be like, you have to tell them.
Yeah, and like my thing is like as the dungeon master, like you're always trying to be like a fan of your players, right? Like you're rooting for them. And so if they roll like that, or they roll like a 17 and they feel pretty good about it, but it's a tough monster, and you're like, that's when I reveal that information by trying to like be bummed with them, right? I'm like, like that was a good roll, but unfortunately it's a ancient dragon, it's an 18 that it was required to pass. It's like, sorry, man, and then you roll the damage.
That's really funny to you, yeah, because I go, ha, you suck.
It's true. You do love a ha, you fucking suck.
Just immediately put him down for it. Yeah. You suck at rolling dice, you idiot.
Dude, and it doesn't feel good because sometimes it's like the same player over and over that like just can't pass a check to save their life, and that is definitely like when I, if a player's struggling and I ask another check of them and they roll maybe not great and it's like a 12, I might be like, oh, that just makes it. Like you do it, it's like, and I did, that's when I don't tell them the DC because they just need a win.
Oh, hold on. But if they do that, and they're all like a 4, how the fuck are you gonna recover?
Oh, it doesn't. If it's a 4, you can't. If you ask a roll and they roll a 4, you just have to be like, unfortunately,
you're like, oh,
you do fail
this
again.
is just the way it is. You've just iced it. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
You join in with me. You're like, you're an idiot. I don't know what to tell you.
Have you ever done the thing where like combat is happening and players are rolling like pretty well and they're doing damage or whatever, and so like everything's like obviously a hit, they're rolling like 20 whatevers to hit or whatever, and then some players like, ooh, I roll a 15, and you're like, ooh, that just does it, because like you want to give them the hit, and then like a couple rounds later somebody like rolls a 16 and you're like, ooh, I don't think that hits, and they're like, wait, but he hit with the 15, I thought it was 15. I'm like, oh, you're right, it was, because like I was like trying to give a player.
I can't remember a spot where I've done that, but I've DM'd mostly Monster of the Week, but I have been like, turned like a success into not like a hit on something. But it instead of like hitting the thing, it obviously did something way better for them.
Yeah. Oh, you mean like instead of just like a direct hit of like, oh, deal your damage, it's like, oh, you've disabled some aspect of that monster.
Yeah, either reveal something or trap it in some way.
That's a fun way to make a success more interesting.
Yeah, because for combat especially in that game, like in super narrative combat, someone can be like, okay, my plan is to shoot at it, and then they roll the dice and they're like, oh, I got a 14. It's like, oh, you shot at it really good. How can we make your life better in this scenario?
Yeah.
So I like to do stuff like that.
Yeah, especially for like that, where like it's almost like a critical success. It's like, like you do something a little extra, like that's fun. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and in a system where like crits are not explicitly given, in that, like in Monster of the Week, there's some abilities you can have like modifiers that they'll add on if you're over 12, but you don't get a ton of those, and then when you do roll over a 12, it feels like just rolling like a fucking 10. So it's just kind of a cool thing that I like to add on in that game.
Yeah. So yeah, in conclusion here, I think you do both. I think sometimes you tell them to check, sometimes you don't. One, it gives you a little bit of room as a DM to like, balance things on the fly if you don't tell them, and maybe give a player, kind of throw a player a bone if they haven't been succeeding, but also gives you the room to like make something more challenging. And then I think in a role that really matters, I think you tell them the DC and you make it a big deal and you make a show of it. Like, you're going to need an 18 to succeed. Like, and then they roll in front of the table. Everybody's looking at that dice on the edge of their seat, and it's an 18 and the fucking, the room explodes. Like that's how you get those moments, is when they know the DC. So yeah, I would say definitely do both.
I fully agree with that. You kind of have to do both, or else you're just going to get thrown off entirely.
Yeah.
It's too much sometimes to just always keep track of the DCs for things. Always be like, oh, how hard is this?
Yeah, well, sometimes it's a weird thing. It's like, I want to distract the guard by pulling my pants down and shitting on the floor. And it's like, what is the DC? I don't know. How...
You're persuading the guard.
Yeah, it's like, clearly, that's a performance? It's like, that's a performance check, and like, that is pretty distracting. So like, how like loyal is this guard to whoever he's working for, or whatever thing he's guarding? Like, how unlikely is he to get distracted? It's just hard. So you just kind of let them roll, and if they roll a 2, you're like, you make an idiot of yourself, and you shit on the ground, and the guard doesn't even look your direction. He's a Buckingham Palace guard. Like, he's just stoic. And if they roll an 18, you're like, he gets so flustered. He runs over, asks if you're sick. Are you okay? Do you need help? And then the rest of the party sneaks in the door or whatever. Like, that's the one where it's like, I don't have a DC in my head. Like, let's just let the dice.
What guard sees a person shit on the ground and is like, oh, are you okay?
A guard with compassion, Jake. An empathy guard.
I play the guard of empathy.
You can have an NPC be a nice guy, man. A concerned, nice guy just doing a job. Not every guard has to be like, what's the fucking password? Get out of my face. Not every guard's got to be that guy.
I guess it's fair.
All right. I have another fun one here. I think a classic Dungeon Master issue. When world building or coming up with like fun loot on the fly, do you regret letting your PCs have guns? The Zentarum captain pulled a revolver last session during a bar fight. Didn't shoot anybody, but oopsie, now they exist. Clearly, the 2024 rules account for pistols. Have you let your players have them in your fantasy world? Am I going to regret this? So I want to broaden this out because, like, I think this question is less interesting when talking about balance, because like you can balance guns. If you want guns in your world, just use like, if you want to talk about balance, just make them crossbows. Like use the stats for crossbows and bows. If you're talking about
guns, that the weapon that made all other weapons in history obsolete.
True.
You are talking about a gun, sir.
Yeah, that is true. But yeah, you can balance them. Like, I'm not as worried about that. But thematically and like world building wise, you're playing in a high fantasy world. Do you introduce guns? Is that more interesting? Is that less interesting? How do you or and I guess we can get into like other technologies because we've done that before. We've had high fantasy where we've started to introduce
some steampunk aspects.
Yeah, some steampunky, artificer-esque, cool inventions or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
I think that they could be that they're oftentimes incredibly interesting to players, so they're gravitated towards.
Yeah.
Because obviously, I mean, if you lived back then and you see a fucking revolver for the first time, you're gonna be like, "What is that?"
Yeah, true.
That is the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. You pulled the trigger and the thing across, like 100 feet from you just fell over dead. That's never happened before.
In an explosion.
In an explosion. Yeah.
It's like magic. It's like casting fireball, but anybody can do it.
Anybody can do it. It's cool. There are some things that I've done, like I did High Fantasy World with a train, and that was like the biggest difference is that there's just a train.
Yeah.
I
cool
think
too because it like opened up like the train specifically. Like when you built, I remember when you built that world, you had like kind of each city or like area that you created like had a resource that they were particularly like bountiful in, and so like that was their main like export. And so like it was almost this like Catan-esque game of like these guys produce all the wood and these guys produce all the stone, and like everyone has to work together to build things. And then there was a train that allowed for all that train to let the trade happen, and that's cool. It made for some interesting stuff.
I went a little hard into like U.S. history in that one because that's how essentially every city ever was made. Is just what resource can I tightly pack onto a boat or a train and ship somewhere else? A lot of it's logging, a lot of it's mining, and that's how most of the West, I guess, was made. So I kind of went with that as my like building grounds for how I'm going to make it. So each city just got like a thing that they're exceptionally good at. And then once you build that, it's how does each city benefit from each other, and then that gives you a bunch of different governments with not only like interesting reasons to either like trade be bad or things happen to the train that can ruin things. It makes the world feel really big, I think.
Yeah. And that's a great way to world build. I mean, thinking about, what cities, like you said, are good at or what they provide and how that interacts with all the other cities makes building a new city interesting, because it's like, when you're building out your world and you're like, okay, what's this one have? Well, I've got, wood and stone or whatever. Maybe these guys are, maybe they value knowledge, maybe they're scribes and librarians and things like that. And they, have this written word, but like other cities benefit because, there are some texts and some tomes of knowledge that have been kind of lost to time, but these guys have it, things like that. So yeah, I think it's a great way to world build when thinking about what cities provide and what they're good at. Yeah, I think that's just awesome. And so adding in more futuristic stuff, like in that instance, was really interesting and created some really interesting scenarios and problems. I had a world that was pretty standard high fantasy that we did add guns at some point. And I mean, kind of like you said, like really the biggest reason for it was like just player interest. Like it was just something that spur of the moment I kind of added in just because I thought it'd be fun, and everybody was pretty excited about it and thought it was pretty cool. And like one player specifically like definitely wanted to build his character around using guns, and
I did too though. But like but I didn't get the gun. I hate you for that, actually.
You did get a gun. You had the
eventually
revolver.
I did get a gun, yes.
You had a really
I didn't get the
cool
first
revolver.
gun. We gave the first
gun.
We gave the first gun to the other guy.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was just like, I knew it was something you guys would be excited about, and you were, and so I'd say it's a success. In that instance, adding guns was cool. People liked it. But it definitely...
pretty good.
Yeah, and it's definitely a decision, and that added some cool systems too. Because then I had like you could get attachments for guns that like made them play differently. So there's some cool stuff that you can do with this. So like in that instance, with weapon customization and things like that, like I knew that you guys would enjoy it, and so I did it, and it was fun. But it is kind of one of those things of like once you do it, you can't ever go back, right? Once there's guns, like now more people have to have guns because like I feel like it's weird when like oh they're so rare, you know, it's incredibly rare to see a gun because like once if somebody made guns, like people are going to realize how powerful they are, and everybody's going to want them and build them, right? So like the demand would be high. So unless there's like some incredibly rare resource it would take to create a gun or their version of a gun, it doesn't make a lot of sense for them to be rare necessarily.
Or there's some like no one else has invented gunpowder yet.
Yeah, exactly. It's like only, or like maybe instead of like gunpowder, it's like something more magical, right? It's like a magical dust that only, you know, can be mined from this one mountain. And it's like, okay, that makes sense why they're rare. So if you want them to be rare, that's cool. And you could do interesting stuff with that. Otherwise, they have to be commonplace.
Like the idea, if a gun is super rare, to also make it insanely powerful.
Yeah,
and have incredible like be so limited on your bullets with it. Like,
yeah, that's cool.
You get this gun, you have 3 bullets.
Yeah, and it costs depending on how much gold you give in your campaign or whatever, but it costs a lot of gold. Gold that you'll have to save up for to get more and more bullets. That's something you have to think about, and that's cool because then maybe all your players want a gun at some point. With like a couple shots. So it's like. Yeah. They're all working towards, getting this really rare thing.
Gun you have like +5 to hit with gun, and gun does gun is disintegrate.
Yeah, it does like 3d10 damage. That'd be cool. Or maybe it's like maybe it is just on your ranged character, right? Or some character that's proficient with a gun for some reason, and the other players know how powerful it is, so like they contribute to like helping them find or buy ammo. Because it's like, oh, we really want him to have more shots with it because it's really good. That could be fun. But yeah, in that instance, if it's like they're so rare that like only one player might have one, and it's really powerful, there's got to be other cool stuff then, right? You have to have other cool, powerful stuff to give to the rest of your players. Because if it's just like one character has this amazing, awesome, magical, super rare weapon, and everybody else just has the normal shit, then that's not going to be any fun. It's kind of like giving your paladin the Holy Avenger. Right? I always struggle with that because like it's so cool and like everybody that builds a paladin wants their Holy Avenger, right? Mm-hmm. But like I wish every class had something like that. Like how are you going to give the paladin their Holy Avenger and then 2 minutes later when they open another chest be like, "Oh yes, and the rogue, a dagger of venom." It's like, okay, cool, but it's not the Holy Avenger.
It's not the Holy Avenger.
Yeah, and like there's just not I don't know. The weapons at that power tier for other classes are not as interesting. I mean, like there's there's like the luck blades that can cast wishes, or a Vorpal sword for a fighter is very cool. Where like on a crit you like behead it and it just insta dies, like very powerful. But
yeah,
nothing beats the Holy Avenger, man.
Not actually that good. The Holy Avenger is.
It depends on your campaign. If you're running,
if you have a lot of undead in it, and undead and demons is basically when it's good.
Yeah, if you're running like a campaign with about a BBG necromancer who's summoning armies of the dead, and every crypt you go into is filled with skeletons and zombies. Yeah, Curse of Strahd, fantastic weapon, super good. In like something else, and in a campaign about dragons, not super impressive.
Yeah, it's just a +3 sword at that point.
Yeah,
which is, hey. Pretty strong. +3 sword, pretty good.
Decent sword.
Just, you're not getting that extra radiant damage.
Yeah.
I struggle with, like, powerful weapons. Because, in one hand, I think that they're very cool. But in the other hand, I'm like, I can't give these guys an inch or they'll take a mile. And and if I give you a super powerful weapon, I'm just setting myself up for failure.
That's fair. It does make balancing combat hard. Me though, like that's like one of the reasons why I play D&D. Like, I think it comes from, like, Lord of the Rings and, like, King Arthur. Like, getting
looking at it and being like, oh, look, he's got Sting now. He's got this super
he, like, getting a named weapon. Or, pulling the sword from the stone, getting Excalibur, getting Sting, getting, Anduril, Narsil. It's just so cool to me. Like, the idea of it's just so cool. And having this, like, weapon that, your character takes care of, and like it's their like signature weapon. It's just so cool. And like any character I play, I feel like I'm looking for that signature weapon, and I get really sad when a campaign ends and I didn't get a cool weapon actually, which is not super fair, but I just like it. It's so
systems that I like running are not the most conducive to like interesting, like really interesting weapons like that.
Yeah, Dungeon World is hard. Dungeon World. Powered by Apocalypse is hard to give. They don't really have a system for like magic weapons necessarily, other than just like, oh, it's a +1, +2. Which is
they're
so,
they're
like,
basically like, come up with like, and you have to invent them. Isn't this fun?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, why didn't you give me some as an example?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like I would have loved a little bit more guidance there, but so it was just a lot more homebrewing work on my part to get.
And then Monster
weapons.
of the Week. Bro, if you have a gun, you're doing pretty fucking good.
Yeah, which like they have, flamethrowers, sniper rifles, things like that, which is cool. But like, there's not a lot that's like, well, some of the playbooks have kind of magical weapons.
The professional gets like a signature weapon.
Yeah, or like, but like the divine can choose between like a flaming sword or like a lightning hammer or something.
Yes,
right? Which is kind of cool.
And then the chosen gets a signature weapon, not the professional. The professional gets a bunch of like weapon options.
Yeah. So there's some stuff in that game.
Yeah.
We've been talking about Daggerheart.
It's class based instead.
Yeah, that's true. We've been talking about Daggerheart, and I've been reading through that book. Man, there's some cool magic weapons in that book. Daggerheart nails it.
Wish that we got to talk about Daggerheart in the next episode, but we are not playing it this weekend, so we have to wait until the episode after.
I know. We'll be talking about Daggerheart.
That in 2 episodes after this one, it is probably going to be just about Daggerheart and our thoughts about it.
The thing that I really like about like the way that Daggerheart does it is there's like physical weapons and magic weapons, and so physical weapons, like even like a +2 greatsword, right, is not a magical weapon. It's still a physical weapon. It's a good physical weapon, right?
It's just like a honed, sharpened sword.
Yeah, but it's like it's about physical damage versus magic damage, right? Some monsters are weaker to physical damage or magic damage, and if you're a class that can cast spells, if you're a wizard or a ranger or a seraph or whatever, then you can use the magic weapons. But they're like just as powerful and cool as the physical weapons. So like a fighter might have a great sword, but a wizard might have like arcane gauntlets that do the same amount of damage, but they just can punch and they deal magic damage, right? So like it gives like this system where it's like you could absolutely have like a martial based spellcaster or something because the weapon options are there. Magic weapons also get things like returning weapons where you can throw them and they come back to you. So that's kind of class that it falls into. But yeah, the arcane gauntlets really stood out to me because they're super high damage, really short range. And I was like, I don't know, the idea of a wizard that casts fireball and then runs in and punches you with arcane gauntlets
that's
is
so
awesome.
Interesting because like in D&D, wizards are pushovers.
Wizards
are pushovers.
You give him a staff with like other spells. It's like, great, I cast spells and now I can cast 2 more spells without using spell slots.
Hey, little guy, here's a +1 arcane focus. Isn't that special?
Yeah, which like statistically is good for them, but it's so boring. And then you look over at your paladin and you're like, here's the sword, the divine blade, wielder of the darkness and shatterer of the demon realm. And you're like, oh, and wizard, here's a staff of web. You can cast a web. Isn't that cool?
Isn't that fun? Aren't you special?
Yeah, that's lame, man. I hate that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think Daggerheart handles it super well. So I'm excited for the loot in that game.
Next time I DM D&D, I'm going to do that to you, actually. I'm going to be like,
I'm going to be the wizard.
Look, little guy, Gavin just got the Holy Avenger. And
I love cool weapons.
What did you get? Oh, isn't that nice? A little scroll of mending. Oh,
Yeah, a scroll of mending is brutal, man. A scroll that lets you cast a cantrip one time. I'd kill myself. No, I love cool swords, man. I love having a badass weapon. Give me more. It doesn't even have to be that good, but if it's named and cool,
okay. The scroll's name is Jared, and it's a scroll of mending.
I don't know. It's a little better.
What if it talks?
We're getting there. We're getting somewhere. But then if I use him, he dies.
I'm waiting for the day the scroll of mending comes to my lap.
No, I've come full circle. This is actually incredible.
He loves the scroll of mending.
Because you give me the scroll of mending, and he's cute, and he talks, and his name's Jared, and like I carry him around all the time with me, and I'm always talking to him. And then at the very end of the campaign, there's a sword, a legendary sword, but it's broken, right? It's broken in half, and I have to use the scroll of mending, and I have to sacrifice Jared to get the legendary sword.
But Jared.
Then, and I think Jared's gone, and I get this legendary weapon, but I'll always miss Jared. But then the sword speaks to me, and Jared's in the sword now.
Jared's in the sword.
So yeah, you guys can all steal that. Have fun in your next D&D campaign, but with your scroll of mending that leads to a legendary sword.
You can name it something cooler than Jared, but don't.
If you
why would you?
But why would you? All right, well.
That was
some good advice. That was a fun one. Short and sweet. I mean, not short.
Not short. We talked about it
for a while. It went by quick. All right. So, I'll do it. I'm going to do it, Jake.
You're doing a third?
No, I don't have a third. That was all of them.
Oh,
I was gonna do our little. I was gonna say our spiel.
Our spiel?
Leave a comment below. We have our email also in the description if you would like to send us an email. I would love to hear any D&D stories you have or advice you might need for your campaign. If you have funny stories, horrifying stories of how a campaign went wrong, leave anything in the comments or send it to our email. I'd love to hear from it. Other than that, we've been the Gelatinous Dudes. I'm Keegan. This is my best buddy, Jake. And goodbye.